Hello everybody, it's Peter. Peter with an I, S-T-A-W-A-R-T. Welcome to segment 32 of...
I don't know, the Dark Tower, I guess?
As Nancy sat staring off into space, her mind wandered off to another passion. A passion that humbles hatred. It was horror. Horror doesn't seem like a passion, but it is. It too makes the mind feel alive. She began to consider the haunting of the house. Nancy and Joe hadn't seen any ghosts, which was nice, but they sure wished Frank hadn't put the idea in their minds. A clever piece of fiction that she had crafted in her brain was that the spirit of a person who had once lived in the house and had felt such a connection to it that it returned to the place to haunt. The house was a type of sacred ground. Nancy pondered the idea of a sacred ground or any other target of spirituality. If a person were to handcraft each cabinet, set every window, and hang every door, and be around those things all the time for decades, the connection would be indeed intimate. Nancy found her idea of a sacred ground intriguing. What if she could incorporate this into her program somehow? She spent a lot of time with the computer, but that wouldn't be really something of her own making. What if she were to give the program a body, an electric body, and she could fashion the curves of the metal and fasten all the bolts and connect all the wires? It would be an electric, portable, walking sacred ground. She looked at the clock and her eyes widened. It was 3 minutes until 9 o'clock. The dentist had given her a videotape and instructed her to record a show for him on Channel 4. She had very little time before it started, but she wanted to see what other types of things were on the tape. After all, she could be missing out on some good blackmail material. What she found was a grainy black and white surveillance tape from the camera stationed in the office. Just for the heck of it, she took a pen and started jotting a few things down, looking back at the tape playback of the 6-quadrant screen for reference. Chapter 30. "But when you say you love me, I want you to really mean it," whined Soleil as the dentist anxiously dug through the box of unfiled papers in search of some income reports dating back to 6 months ago. He was too busy to deal with Soleil's nonsense. But she really needed him to say that he loved her, and say it in a meaningful way. She didn't really care if he loved her or not. She just wanted him to jump through hoops and pamper her. He slammed a drawer and uttered a swear word. Soleil started to cry. "I don't like it when you get so mad. Let's take a vacation." The dentist chortled. If he did what she said and went on vacation, everything he built would crumble, and she'd simply move on to another man whose empire hadn't gone to bust. He took out his wallet and stuffed a wad of money into her hand. "Go shopping," he said, and made his way out. He knew she would try following him, bawling her head off, so he locked the door behind him. Soleil could use the other door, but to her, that door was symbolic, and a vacation would also be symbolic of their love. Colonel Clink sat fooling with a pen while the other partner bounced a ping-pong ball. The dentist knew the bouncing would continue after he started talking, so he curtly snatched the ball away, smashed it with a decorative stone sculpture, and gave it back before taking a seat and straightening the stack of papers he'd brought out. All three of them ignored the sobbing girl on the other side of the door. Actually, it cut the boredom, but not much. As the dentist started going through a bunch of papers, Colonel Clink threw down his pen. "This is a bunch of old cheese," he said, completely bored. "We have to get through this," demanded the dentist. "This is for you guys, as much as it is for me." He had another headache, brought on by looking for things. He didn't realize how far behind the filing clerk had gotten, and how badly it would come back to bite him. He took solstice in recalling the former filing clerk's fate. Nancy, who was supposed to be replacing the swabs in the jar located in the op room, jumped when a breeze pulled at the plastic that temporarily replaced the plate glass window that had been broken out a few days by the elevating dentist chair. She was particularly anxious because, at any time, the secretary could discover that her set of keys had been borrowed. Once inside the bathroom, she pressed each side of each key into a small chunk of riverbed clay she'd gotten from the arts and crafts shop earlier. After making a template of each key, she placed the clay tablets in an old eyeglass box and snapped the latch and hinge shut, carefully placed the container in her pocket, and made her way out. When Nancy returned to the reception desk, the secretary was digging through her purse. There was no way Nancy could slip the keys back in now. Nancy marveled at her own bad luck. Of all the single minutes that composed the 8-hour shift she was on, why did the secretary have to start digging for her keys just then? Irritated, Nancy felt like shouting at her. The secretary wasn't actually looking for her keys. She pulled out her emergency bag of cookies. The bag she was munching on before was cleaned out, and she didn't know what she would do without cookies. "Want some?" she asked. Nancy shook her head. She was still a little bit angry at the secretary for looking through her own purse. Nancy looked around nervously. She would have waited for a better time to throw the keys back in the purse, but it was like they were hot potatoes, and the longer they were missing from their proper place, the bigger the risk she was taking of getting burned. The ring of the phone caused Nancy to flinch when the secretary answered it. Nancy quickly forced the keys back into the mouth of the handbag. Without warning, the secretary turned to grab a notepad. Nancy's hand was all the way inside the leather mouth, and she was red-handed. Nancy forced herself not to quickly draw back like she was bitten by a hot stove. Instead, she did it slowly, and the secretary witnessed her pulling out the bag of cookies. "Maybe I will have some," said Nancy in a whispering voice. The secretary, preoccupied with the phone call, nodded as she listened to the caller before dictating a few dates and times from a spreadsheet. Nancy thought about planting the secretary's bag of cookies in the dentist's toy chest, so little kids would be instantly fixated on them and ignore all the other little plastic knickknacks. Of course, kids get that fluoride coating on their teeth and can't eat for a few hours, and the parents would have to take the kid out screaming and kicking, begging for cookies, and the dentist would look like a big fat bad guy by both the parents and the children, and probably be in the newspaper. Nancy decided against it, that she didn't want to start shooting at shrews before the big fox hunt. Nancy caught a whiff of the cookies. They were Compulsive brand cookies, with 2 little round chocolate chip cookies in the place of the O's.
Mom's gonna have some food tonight. Ooh.
To convey to the buyer that they were sinfully delicious, a pink devil was incorporated into the logo.
Yummy.
Nancy's strict regiment of exercise during the past 6 months had not made her petite. She wasn't fat. She had gotten tankish, with tank-like features. Her physique could have been used to invade Poland. Nancy knew that if she took even one bite of any of those cookies, she would be hooked. She was sure they contained an opiate of some sort that made them so feverishly good. The secretary was saying that when her mother fell and broke her arm, they fed her a bunch of Compulsive brand cookies, and she was fine.